Welcome everyone to today's Chai with Viji. As you know, I'm Viji and I'm an Ayurvedic birth expert and a founder of a small healthcare practice called Divine Journey, where I support women through all the thresholds in their life. And every Sunday I always say this, every first Sunday of the month, I do a chai with Viji, just an opportunity to gather together in community and support one another and just, enjoy each other's company. Hopefully discussing a topic that is of relevance to everyone and they can learn. Today's topic is the weight we hold, exploring the energies of kapha, nourishment, heaviness, and stability. I want to invite everybody to, just in the beginning, to keep their video on just for me to say hi and see you all. Hi everyone. Thank you so much. Oh, it's really cold today everywhere. Anyways, thank you so much for joining again. I am recording this so those who are coming in late or who want to see it later will be able to see it on YouTube. So I wanted to start, even though now all of you have your video on, I'm actually going to ask you to put your video off so that we could just kind of step into this space and be deliberate. So I'm going to turn off my video as well. The work that I do is really about connecting with that very deep part of ourselves. And it actually means so much to me. I've called it Becoming Mother, but I want to really make it clear that it's not just about those of us who, are trying to create a human child, but really connecting to that inner part of ourselves that's divine, that's strong, that has the capacity to have compassion, to nurture, and to hold. And that's in every one of us, whether it be male or female. And I really do believe that connecting to that part of ourselves is what will support us in our life, because if we're not able to do that for ourselves, that's the first part of healing. So I'd like to invite you guys to just close your eyes for a moment and take a nice, deep, slow breath and let it out. Wherever you're sitting, if your feet's on the ground or your bottom is on a bed or a couch or a chair, feel the weight of your body supported by the earth beneath you. Notice where in your body you may feel a bit of heaviness or even lightness, and where there is space. And invite that breath that you just took in and that comes in and out of your nose. Invite that breath to move like water, steady, gentle, flowing through all the parts of you. And I want to invoke that spirit of becoming mother. And in your own mind's eye, say to yourself that I am held, I am steady, and I am here. Every time I do a talk, I wanted to, I really would like to try to bring in the 5 pillars that, again, about healing. And the first one is about creating self-awareness. And when we create self-awareness, then we are more likely to understand who we are, what we're working with. And that's where the connection to our inner mother, our inner spirit can begin. And it is only then that we can understand the context, of how we relate to others and what kind of situation we're in, where then it allows us to, either look inward or outward to utilize the wisdom and tools that are available to us, get the support that we need, and then integrate all of these thoughts, these learnings, this support so that we can achieve and accomplish our goals. So I want to continue and talk about today's topic. So last time when I met with you guys, we first talked about the energies of that exist in the universe and that exist within us. And my attempt is to try to get all of us to actually really hone in on that inner awareness. So I first talked about heat, the heat that exists within us, and also in the universe and how it impacts us. And then we talked about last time the air within us and how that guides us, is very important for communication, and like all energies, has the ability to impact us both positively and and can challenge us in many ways. Today, I wanted to talk about the weight that we hold. And in this way, all of these energies, I want to again bring context to this, that they exist within a greater context of the fact that these energies are so important for us to be aware of and understand how they impact us, right? I think a lot of people, so the word doshas themselves has a negative connotation. If you don't know what the word dosha means, it means something that can harm. And so I think a lot of people, when I, talk to them and say, oh, this is in excess or that is in excess, this particular quality, you're eating foods that are too heating for your body or too heavy for your body or too light. These are always taken as negative. So I want to bring it back to understanding that this is about having reverence for who we are and understanding ourselves and understanding the energies that impact us and that exist in the world. So when we honor them, we just understand that when we work with them, they won't harm us. And when we allow them to work against us, or we do things that worked against those energies, then there is that potentiality of harm. But it is about understanding and then utilizing these energies to live, a beautiful life. So these energies, especially today's energy, is about creation, kapha. Okay. And then the energy that we talked about in the first talk two times ago was about homeostasis in the body, creating sustenance, harnessing energy to do work. And then finally, the like all processes in life, where there is creation, then sustenance, there is that dissolution. So it's important for us to understand how this process happens every day in our life. And today we'll talk about the weight. So before we even get into that, as I invite all of you every single time, can someone share with me what thoughts come to them when we talk about the weight that they hold? Anyone? For me,
I always think like mental and physical, so like physical weight, but also like emotional weight or like
Mhm.
grief.
Yeah. Anybody else? One of the things that come to me when I think about the weight we hold is guilt, and the fact that also the attachment. So attachment to a thought, an idea, or an expectation that we put on ourselves, that we have to be a certain way. And I think that that's a significant weight, literally, that we carry or that we hold. And oftentimes it's that thought process or that weight that prevents us from, doing things that we need to do, because we feel such heaviness in our body and in our mind to be able to kind of harness the energy that we need to move forward or achieve what we want to achieve. So, so in Ayurveda, everything is described by quality because it helps us to understand how it impacts our body, how it impacts our mind. And for kapha, it's about these qualities of heaviness, of slowness, of lubrication, cold, support, flexible, and something that's bindy or sticking. I think I just talked about that. And I always find that when I talk about this, all of these adjectives become very, very esoteric. How do we apply these? What does this mean to ourselves? And I want to kind of, when we experience this, whether it be through any way that we experience them, the positive ways in which it impacts us is that we can feel really grounded and solid and steady. We can feel nourished. We can feel really calm and settled in ourselves. We make decisions or we do things very, very in a very clear way, like thoughtful way. It also helps us to be, loving towards people, ourselves. And there's also a strength that comes with this grounded energy. And in the way that we interact with others, we tend to be gentle, we tend to be kind, compassionate. And then also it's really the energy that helps us connect with others to form relationships, including ourselves. So these are the positive qualities of kapha. And so it's a way for me to help you understand that, again, these energies are can be very, very positive. It's about how, we manifest. But then when it becomes something that we either become obsessed with or too much focused on, or that impacts us negatively, then these same energies that impact us positively can actually affect us in a way that can cause us harm. And so those same energies that once, made us feel grounded can also make us feel burdened. It can make us feel really tired, resistant to change, like, stubborn even. And kapha actually also means mucus. And so in the body, we can feel not only the signs of like, feeling sticky and having that kind of sliminess within us, but we literally can feel congested in the sense that we're not going to be able to move forward. Feeling very attached, to people or to things or to ideas. In that way, because we kind of just don't know how to respond, we may retreat, and then we might appear to be cold and withdrawn, but it's more that we're unable to kind of move from that heavy feeling that we have inside. And so this then creates that stickiness where we are stuck to certain things, and we may, overly want to be in another space or feel very sensitive about things and feel very needy. And so you'll see here that, we don't just feel these energies physically, but we feel them also emotionally. So, like all times, you see this dichotomy in this image about these two same individual who can feel the energies of kapha, but both in a positive yet challenging way. And I think many people may think about, well, how do I get, from all of these good qualities on the left, how does it get to the left, or how do we go from the right, to the left? And it's about really understanding kind of what's going on with ourselves and seeing how we can, like, it's funny. I don't know if all of you heard, but I put on the Taylor Swift music because uncannily that actually gets me a little bit excited. But I wanted to break up that morning kapha that exists actually in the day when we first wake up, and kind of break that energy. And it's about utilizing the different ways in which we can move that energy to go from these heavier qualities that keep us stuck to the same grounded qualities, but that helps us connect not only to others, but to ourselves. Any thoughts from any of you on these qualities? Physically in the body, kapha can give us strength, but it also can help us, again, feel really stuck. It gives us strength. Kapha actually is the energy of our ojas, or our ability to withstand like disease. And so when you have strong kapha energy in your body, your body structure, your body's ability to not get sick is quite strong. But then that same energy that creates protection can also be too much. This is where, one would gain weight, feel heavy, swelling can happen in the body. Kapha is the energy that gives good movement. It lubricates our joints, but it can also cause stiffness when there's too much. So kapha gives nourishment to the body, but then when we have too much of that, we feel really, really heavy, and difficult to kind of get ourselves even out of bed sometimes, and hold things. That word holding is there, and so that holding will create all of these things within us. And so if you've ever experienced this, the idea of showing you these qualities is to help you connect with how these different energies manifest in ourselves, and how you're able to recognize them. Has anyone felt any of these things and wondered, like, has anyone felt the fact that like both of these energies at the same time? I'm just curious. So for me, what I notice is that I tend to there's a part of me that I think, because of society, tends to look down upon some of these kapha qualities, because when we look at kapha, we think that it's just about somebody, being a larger, or being needy or very emotional. But it's about refining the qualities to utilize them to to really create joy. And for me, one of the things, when I turned 40 for 45, I ran a lot of half marathons. And this quality of kapha, because of so much movement that I did in my body, started to reduce. And so it was a conscious choice that I made to not actually do that extensive exercise, because I valued the fact that as I age and get older in my life, these qualities are going to be very important for me to have good health. And so then I invited that quality, back in. And so it's important to then just have that balance, right? So understanding where these qualities are going to support us, and making those choices, even though it may not come with the idealness that we think about, and these are the choices that we have to make to create our like health within us. So again, how do we know how these qualities are going to impact us? Well, this is, again, like I shared with you all the other times, the qualities that exist in kapha come through us, through all of our sense organs, whether it be what we see and we watch a great movie and that it makes us happy and feel secure, or what we hear. For me, it is Taylor Swift. What we smell, what we eat, and what we touch and what we feel. So through all of these different ways, this is how this energy is going to impact us. So now, let's move on to the different stages of our lives and see how this energy can impact us. So again, all of you are at different stages in your life, but for those of us trying to conceive, it's so important to pay attention, because, so for example, you may have difficulty processing the food that you eat. And so that shows up as sluggish digestion. Or, now, by the way, none of these things necessarily prevent you from conceiving, but it's important to recognize whether this is impacting your body. So you may have a bit of weight gain. You may feel like mentally that you're obsessing over something. It's difficult for you to accept new ideas, things like that. You might feel not so motivated. So this is important for you to just be aware of, because this also then has that impact biologically. So this will influence our hormones. So mucus, like I said, so kapha is another word for mucus, and these kind of qualities may show up in our reproductive system, and will impact the way that we could potentially conceive. Anybody have any questions on this part about conception and how this can influence us? One of the things that I recently talked to someone about is the fact that even though our bodies may not appear to be what we associate with kapha, we may be very skinny, we may be very active, and we don't kind of relate to some of the qualities that I showed earlier. We have to understand that when we are overly attached to something as well, that is a kapha quality. And that very quality may prevent us from doing the things that we need to do to create joy. And that joy, which is also kapha, allows us then to create the space to invite new life. Did what I say just make sense? I'm curious. Because this is very important. I think a lot of people see that, like hormonal issues, a lot of hormonal issues when women try to conceive is related to pitta, right? And so there's a huge focus on that. But kapha is also a very important energy, that we have to have that protective energy, but also have to identify whether, for example, the foods that we eat. So eating a lot of heavy foods like dairy or even wheat, and I'm not saying you shouldn't eat those foods. I'm saying that these are foods that add heaviness to the body and add strength to the body as well. It's important to make sure that we understand when, I'm eating something, I'm feeling like my digestion is sluggish. Maybe I need to re-examine, what I eat or how I'm feeling, or the things that I'm doing, because these may create congestion in the body. So it's good to just be aware. So during pregnancy, a lot of women experience swelling, slower digestion, especially, in the middle of pregnancy as the baby is growing, because the baby is also another aspect of kapha that's growing inside of us. We have sometimes feeling a lot of tiredness. And I also want to make sure that people understand this is just not all about negative qualities. There is a strong nesting, instinct. And that's the quality of nurturing, of creating space for that baby, and doing things to protect the baby. Also, I think so routine is good, but is there a stubbornness to not kind of move away from that routine so that we can do things that'll support ourselves? So these are some of the ways in which kapha can show up during pregnancy. Another thing that can show up is gestational diabetes. This is because the body has difficulty digesting the food, and when we eat heavy foods, it's even burdening the body more, and so that may show up. And the impact of that, right, of all of these things is that, again, so when we have excessive fluids in the body, that's going to put a burden on the body. And so the reason why this is important to understand is because these issues that you see here under the potential impact during pregnancy can can show up as complications either during pregnancy or even, during labor or even afterwards. So it's just important to understand that, and then we can, introduce ways in which we can mitigate that kapha. Any questions about pregnancy? In the postpartum, the biggest kapha heaviness that comes is, postpartum depression. Okay, so again, you'll see there's a theme here that water retention is a big one related to kapha. The slowing down of the digestive system, and your metabolism is a big one. And then this emotional attachment that we have through all of the phases. And so you can see that there's a discernment between an attachment that is, positive, and one that would hinder us from moving forward when we need to move on when we need to. And so sometimes also that energy of kapha, which is nurturing, can be more outward rather than inward, right? And so that's another way in which we have, because that brings about attachment or the over neediness or the blurring of boundaries between you and another person. And so that very, very thin line also is a part of how kapha can show up, feeling overly sleepy, things like that. And then kapha, sweets are kapha. And if you think about it, like things like when we are feeling really down, I know I love a chocolate brownie. And so when we're feeling really down, we tend to go towards these heavy foods naturally because they induce that sense of feeling comforted, right? And so it's something that we should pay attention to. So when we do crave these foods, we need to ask ourselves, what is missing within us that we are looking for, these things? And it's a way then that we could use that opportunity to show that same kind of comfort, but to ourselves. And sometimes when this shows up, the healing process slows down, especially when, for example, in the postpartum, women after they've delivered their babies and they're breastfeeding, if there is either excess milk or stagnation because of that heaviness, then we have clogs of those of the ducts, and then we can have congestion that can lead to other things like mastitis and things like that. Low mood, like I mentioned, and again, just difficulty letting go because we all have these expectations of what we want, what is perfect. And I think that over time, it's important to understand that every opportunity actually provides us a chance and an environment to connect to something in a different way. And then finally, in menopause, as we get older in life, right, this is where, you'll see these same qualities come, but in different aspects. And, the weight gain, the stiffness in the joints, the clinging to ideas. And again, this prevents us from actually doing what we need to do to support ourselves. And in the way that kapha impacts hormones, generally, I would say in all of the different phases of our life tend to be typically the same. Whereas we lose, number one, that inspiration to, have that creative energy, that joy. We tend to be stiff in many ways, both physically as well as emotionally. We tend to feel down, tend to feel heavy, and then we can actually gain weight and have these hormonal sluggishness as well. And then one thing I didn't mention earlier was that in any phase, the biggest kapha adulterators, I would say, are having like fibroids, tumors, any type of growth. So when we have that excess growth in our body that's unusual, we want to start thinking about how and where is kapha coming in my body, because this is the way in which the body is manifesting that. I want to take a little bit of a pause because this is the first time nobody's asked anybody have any thoughts about what we've discussed so far.
I guess for me, Vigi, just thinking about my own experience, it's challenging for me because I feel like a lot of my imbalances are vata, or
Yeah.
I have a lot of vata normally in my body, but then I'm also connecting a lot with kapha. And so it's interesting because normally I would go to like kapha qualities to help balance vata. And so I guess it comes down to noticing which specific qualities are imbalanced and
Yeah.
how to balance. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tricky for my mind to under wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I think kapha tends to be a little bit tricky um, when we don't necessarily. I think a lot of people, at least that I have worked with, typically come with, like you said, the dryness, the inflammatory symptomology. But there are a few things that you bring up that I wanted to, mention. And one is that when in our bodies we experience qualities that are opposite of kapha, our own body has this, I mean, innate intelligence where it brings these kapha qualities in to be able to, support ourselves. And sometimes what happens is when these kapha qualities come in, they come almost like a fire hose, where they come in excess. And this is where the problems arise, right? So, it's kind of like, I always share, when you have dry skin, you naturally go to, you get some lotion or some oil and you put it on your body so that, you'll feel less dry. But when you pour like a whole vat of oil on you, then that's going to, obviously cause other issues. Or, and this is where, for example, I truly believe that when we hold on to things in our body, like emotions, that manifests in a lot of ways that aggravate kapha, but in ways that actually give not the like loving qualities, but more of the growth, more of the heaviness, more of the depression. So I guess what I also wanted to share is that awareness of what we are holding, because it tends to, at least I have seen, especially in women, come up as the troublesome aspects of kapha that cause us problems. So many women who are like more vata and pitta oriented have fibroids or growth like in their body. And either that there's a part of them that they feel that they may not even be aware of that is missing, or that they have brought that sense of loss or emptiness from a previous generation, that they may not even be aware of, and then the body then like tries to literally fill that hole with kapha, but not the healthy kapha. Kyla, you brought up a good point, and I was just curious. So, what are the ways in which you have brought, like, that you think you've brought, or these like positive kapha qualities in, and maybe struggle with? Is it that, for example, someone who has who's a dry person naturally, maybe skinny, maybe tends to, not gain weight easily, but wants to bring in these kapha qualities of more heaviness and nurturing and lubricating and warmth, but then maybe struggle with the fact that you like your body may not be able to, let's say, digest like heavier foods or things like that. Is that the struggle that you face?
Yeah, that. And then also I'm just noticing more of that like um emotional attachment, or like attachment to something that I don't really know what it is yet.
Mm.
Um and or like attachment to expectations, or holding on to expectations.
Yeah. And so this is where it's like, which came first, the egg or the chicken? Because I think that when we are so like, passionate and embody these like pitta qualities, for example, like you really want something, you're very focused, you want to get things done. And so there's a lot of movement then, and you're harnessing that energy. And then I think without even knowing, these kind of almost burdensome is what I would actually say it, but we're not aware of it. Kapha qualities come in and we get attached, right? So like without us knowing, and I think this is where kapha I mean, kapha is such an amazing quality, by the way. It's just that I think, and I'm not really sure whether we have been taught to embrace these positive qualities and like own them, to like take care of ourselves. Because I really do believe that when we infuse like when we proactively bring in these positive kapha qualities, then I think I do believe that the negative aspects tend to happen less because it's almost like we create a foundation with the kapha that helps us to then be able to be active and passionate and strong and hardworking and busy and intense, right? So, and it's by no coincidence that kapha, which I mentioned initially, is the energy of creation. It's the energy that gives us structure. So if we don't have that strong kapha structure and quality within us, then we're really building on a foundation that is tricky because I think we can go, 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 go. And at some point, our bodies are going to break down and it doesn't have that strong quality to help us have a soft landing, if you will. Yeah.
I have a question. This
Yes.
is a good time to ask. Okay.
Anytime's a good time. This is all for us. Yeah. Let's enjoy.
Uh, so one of the things that I find a little bit sort of cognitively or like health-wise dissonant is a a long time for a long time I struggled with like feeling not great after having wheat, especially in the US. Like when I
Yes.
travel abroad, I'm okay. For some reason, it's fine. But when I come back to the US, and then I did the whole 30, which is like complete grain removal, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I've never felt that good in my life. Like a lot of my problems just disappeared. Problems that I thought were like psychological problems just disappeared. And so the one of the things that I'm struggling with is like which you and I have discussed like having carbs during the day, but the moment I have like the wheat in the it definitely helps me feel grounded and helps the rest of the patterns throughout the day, but it also does like funky things. So I don't know how to reconcile that sort of genetically modified wheat situation in the US with like how to create this balanced quality.
Yeah, yeah. Let me give a few of my thoughts, and then anybody also can also chime in. So first of all, okay. So what you're speaking to is the fact that when you removed many of the adulterators, even the sugar, the dairy, the wheat, and all of that, right? So you have one side where yes, they're genetically modified and they aren't the best foods, but on the other side, I'm not going to say that they're bad foods also because in Ayurveda, the qualities that are associated with that, yes, are very kapha. They're very heavy. And so they're difficult to digest. And so in order to be able to digest them, we need to make sure that the machinery in our body that is meant to break them down is working really well. And when that machine is already, let's say, gunked up, for example, right, or unable to digest that food, we are going to feel heavy. And it's not just that we're going to feel heavy in our bodies, because we may or may not. I mean, it's not a exact equation where every single person who eats something that's not good for them is going to feel horrible. However, at some later point in time, or even at that time, maybe you don't feel good in your mind. Like you said, you're not sharp. Like, you or anyone else. And so I think it's just, so from an Ayurvedic perspective, we always look at, first of all, creating like a refined machine that's able to break down. So we obviously work on digestion to be able to do that, because that's what, if you're able to break down the food, then you shouldn't be feeling, it shouldn't be difficult for your body to do that, expending a lot of energy to be able to break down that food, so that that energy will be harnessed in other ways, both mentally as well as physically. I've had many clients who couldn't digest these things, and I think Kyla, you may have also been one of them, but who's unable to digest these foods. But once you work on your digestion, you are. Now, another thing is that some people's digestive system really, unfortunately, are just not able to digest certain things that are too heavy. So I'm not necessarily sure that every person in the world can refine their machinery as much to be able to do that as well. Can So I wanted to just make that comment. But Nita, I mean, Dirga, can you tell me what you meant by the cognitive dissonance? Like, because for me, it basically makes sense. Your body is not, if your body is not able to break it down, then you're going to have all these feelings that you just described. But if you fix your digestion, then you should be able to. And so the balance I would say is you don't want to eat foods that are extremely heavy, but you don't have to go one side of the spectrum or the other, but but in moderation, which suits your body.
I see. Okay, so the idea is just moderating it.
Yeah, because the truth is, right, that like so we're all born with like certain capacities for all of our faculties and all of our organs. And so it's it's not that every single person is absolutely going to be able to digest everything. We have to understand our own bodies, and that's where that first comment was about, self-awareness. For me, I can't eat too spicy foods. Nobody, my husband doesn't believe me, but it literally touches my tongue, and then, on the other end is a lot, I'm in the toilet. And so it's just the way it is. But I don't personally feel upset about it. I know that if there's something that I want, I make a calculated decision. Well, it's gonna happen, and if I choose that I want it to happen, I'll know why it happened, and then I'll probably not do it, every day. Does that make sense? I mean, so you have to understand how your body functions. And I think if, for example, you have a lot of people say like they have like allergies to certain foods. And I can only give you the Ayurvedic train of thought, and that is that if you fix your digestion, most people will not have those allergies. And I have seen that with my own self, not meaning in my practice.
Yeah, I guess like the question really is calibrating to like along the axes of what is your physical tolerance for certain types of food, and when are you having low quality ingredients, l-
Yes.
like shifting from like wheat atta to like khapli atta, for example, that makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe it's just being conscious of all of that and finding this sweet spot.
Yeah, but there is a reason why certain people can eat anything and be able to, like, and it doesn't bother them. I mean, there is, and their digestion, they're just lucky to have really, really good digestion. But that too, when you are going to keep feeding yourself adulterated foods over time, it will catch up to you, right? It will catch up to you. Yeah, so I think we all need to eat for our own bodies, our own mind, because you will be able to tell. There are certain foods that I eat that afterwards, like I can tell, like either it causes me a bit of anxiety or feeling really heavy. Sometimes you get that sugar crash, and then you feel really down. Yeah, Radhika?
Yeah, hi everyone. I was just gonna add to what Deekra was saying that a lot of the times what I've noticed for myself is when you switch to high quality ingredients, it really changes the game.
Yeah.
Like I switched from wheat to kapli atta, and I switched from regular milk to A2 milk.
Oh,
I
yeah.
started making my ghee and not ghee, yeah, A2 ghee as well. Started making paneer at home because the store bought paneer just didn't suit me, and it wasn't causing any harm as such, but I would just feel discomfort in the mind and the body, and I would find it hard. And along with that, also adding certain ingredients in your foods also really help. For example, instead of making a roti with just the kapli atta, you could add a little bit of like jeera and ajwain, and it really makes a big difference. So as much as we say the key is to fix your digestion, it's not an easy process. Like, what does it mean to fix your digestion, right? When my digestion was not functioning really well, I had to do a whole 1 month of panchakarma to be able to bring it to balance, not even fix it completely. So when you say things like the key is to fix digestion, it's not so straightforward. It's a longer process than we think it is, and it's much harder to do it ourselves without help from a
Absolutely.
practitioner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you are doing it. So adding the jita, adding, these different things. I mean, these are ways in which you are supporting your digestion, to do that. So yes, obviously, I mean, the ideal thing is to both choose the right foods that our body can tolerate, as well as fix our digestion. And one thing I want to share, it brings it back to that awareness, the difference between A1 and A, or normal and A, or not normal, but regular, or what we see every day, in the grocery stores, and A2 milk, or the makeup of that milk, and the fact that certain proteins in the milk are difficult for the body to digest. And so that awareness can say, okay, I mean, we're not actually, most people can't digest that. So yes, taking the A2 milk, where our body is able to break it down, and so that there's less digestive toxin in our body. I mean, yes, that's very important. So I think it's both. We can't just, obviously we choose the foods, but then we also want to, even if we choose A2 milk, even if we choose the right atta, even if we add digestive enzyme, digestive herbs, still our bodies may not be feeling good. So I think it's both have to happen hand in hand. At least that's my opinion.
Vicky, I have a question that builds on a couple of the questions just shared. So let's say your digestion is not in the optimal spot yet. Maybe you haven't done the work, or you just can't get beyond a certain point. And there's these foods which don't, um, which in theory would help you bring in some of the kapha, but at the moment you're not able to eat them well and digest them. How would you then bring in the kapha quality? So I guess, as an example, if milk and sugar on paper would be good for your constitution, but at this time your digestion isn't able to break them down, how do you, while continuing to work on digestion, how do you still bring in the kapha qualities in your diet without eating those foods?
Well, that's an amazing question. You asked me many things, and I was trying to remember all of them. So let me say a few things. First of all, like, when we're making choices, I think that this is where a lot of, like, people are very attached to certain things, and that they absolutely want to have those foods, even though they hurt their body. I know someone who has IBS. He can't eat anything, but every time I see this person, he eats like a lot of spicy food, and then he's suffering, like, with a stomach ache, and he's not able to go out, and all of these things. So I think that it's also important to understand that it's okay if we honor what our body can do in that moment, and recognize that it may take time. So the first thing is, and please chime in, because I think I don't know if I remember the entirety of your question, but I think initially what we can do is, like, I don't think we're going to lose out if we don't immediately bring in all those kapha qualities, even though that's quote unquote what our body needs. Because when we put things kapha related in our body, even though, for example, as you say, we may need them, if our body is not able to process them, then it doesn't matter whether they go in or not, right? And so for me, then I would say I would bring in those kapha qualities more through other means, so that I have that nurturing quality that is supporting me while I am building up my capacity to intake food. So the general idea is to give your body what it can take, like, a level of lightness, or a level of minimalness, that your body can intake, like, just basic nutrients to live, which I know everyone's like rolling their eyes when I even say khichdi, but any type of thing that you when you do that, what you're doing is you're just like you're trying to give your body something so that it has sustenance, but it doesn't have to work hard and lose its own vitality and energy in expending to break down something which it's having clearly an issue breaking down. So I would say that kapha qualities can come in through other means, as well as, I mean, so for example, even though ghee is good, if you can't take, ghee is heavy. So, ghee is like the typical or the best kapha, best medium to introduce kapha. But if a person can't digest it, then there's no point in taking it. It's not going to be, it's not going to have a positive impact on the body. So I guess that would be my, I don't, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that actually was a really, so you're saying it all makes sense. You're saying like do what works for your body in that moment. You don't have, obviously you don't force the kapha food if you're not going to digest it. It's counterproductive, but then slowly keep building as your digestion improves, then you can change that balance.
Yeah, because see, like I think because everyone thinks, that it's A plus B equals, C. And I think to the point of Radhika, what she just said is like it's not as easy as just saying fix your digestion. I totally agree. It is, I think including me, I'm just saying we all need to take ownership over the fact that living a healthy life is a daily affair. It's a daily affair on all the levels. And I can understand how it feels really cumbersome, but I think eventually when we get to know our bodies well enough, then, we make these choices in real time. And we may not make the choices all the time, but that's okay. But that's okay, because it's not just clear as, oh, we need to add a little bit of kapha in today. Like you said, for example, I have so many people who are not kapha type people who I'm always afraid are going to be diagnosed with gestational diabetes, right? And so do you add like, sugary, heavy things to that person? No. Why? Because then they're definitely going to get gestational diabetes or be diagnosed with it. So there has to be this like, it's a very subtle, nuanced way in which we have to kind of, move through this. I mean, it's not easy, but I think it's worth it. And when you understand how your own body works, and that more than me, you guys can do, right? Like you eat something, you're like, this bothers me. And then if I give or somebody else gives some feedback, well, if you can, increase your digestive fire, then maybe you'll be able to eat those foods. Well, then, and if you want to give it a chance so that you're not limited with only eating certain foods or not eating at all or eating only at certain times, because that too is going to deplete your body eventually. Dirga?
I was going to start a different topic, so Radhika, if you have something to add
Oh,
on
okay,
to
yeah.
that, you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add to the kapha, your body not being able to digest kapha foods, but bringing in kapha also has I mean, you can also do it through other ways, like Abhyanga, for example. It really, really
Yep.
helps. And what I've learned over the years of being a little bit into Ayurveda and yoga is to be able to regulate your nervous system. That really, really brings pitta and vata in check, which automatically makes your body more lubricated and a little more subtle. I did that extensively when I was trying to conceive. A lot of restorative yoga, example, legs up the wall, long exhales. All of those things actually have a lot of impact and more impact than we think it is, and more than food, even honestly, because my body tends to be on the more kapha side. Viji, you know best. You know my body better than I do. But even so, if I couldn't eat a lot of kapha foods because I didn't want my body to bulk up, I would. All of these practices really, really help regulate everything.
Yeah, and I just didn't mention them, but we will talk about them in the next couple of slides. But absolutely true. When you actually just said sometimes more than food, it's the other things, and I totally agree. And this is why it's just so important to address it, to realize like. To ask the question, what are we holding, onto? Because you, Radhika, very much particular, like, when we do body work, it's fascinating how just doing body work helps her body release kapha. That's it, right? So yes, so there's many ways. Dirga?
Yeah, I had a slightly different question. I know that we've spoken about, like some of these congestions that come
Yes.
from I feel like fasting is something that helps me, but during pregnancy, that's not an option. Do you think that in the postpartum phase, when there is a lot of like the risk of depression, etc., something like that is recommended? Or does fasting help with balance out kapha at all?
So it does, but see, but we're looking at you, for example, right? So you're not like a kapha prakriti, or necessarily very much vikriti person just looking at you. And so when you fast, then other things are going to get aggravated. So you may feel less heaviness, but I believe that heaviness for you comes from other holding that's going on, right? And so this is where we go for it's not just all about addressing it only through food or
Okay.
herbs,
Okay.
right? So because when you fast, then vata increases in the body. And so kapha will decrease. So that's why you start to feel like really good energy. You've shared this with me before. A lot of people who are on raw food diet, for example, they tend to initially, when they start like eating foods that are very, very light in nature, they also feel really light. They have a lot of energy and they're feeling really good. That your body can only tolerate for so long, because there's also a degradative quality to that as well,
Okay.
right? Yeah. So I think everybody's bringing up a good point, and that is that these kapha qualities show up in different ways for different people. It's important to recognize from what angle for you it's showing up, and then address it through these different ways. And the most interesting thing, right, is that, I mean, and many of you can know, sometimes doing all the quote unquote right things by the book doesn't actually help you. And that's because that there are other reasons, other aspects. And that's why, that slide about it comes from what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you think. And especially for women, there is an emotional component, and it is very much understated how it affects and impacts our bodies. And so you show up and you end up with, things in the body that are kapha related, especially related to growth. And that happens because of, oftentimes I find anything related to the female reproductive system is about holding a lot of sadness. And there usually is a tendency for there to be some relationship with mother that is heavy, strained, affected on some level. This is what I have seen throughout my work. And that's why, yes, the argument for addressing all of this, not just through food, I am an extremely big proponent of. I would say like more than 75% of the work that I do with women in general is about this. And people always ask me, and they get upset with me or annoyed. Are you telling me that I'm going to get pregnant just by talking about X, Y, and Z? And all of those people, yes, have gotten pregnant, talking about or working through all of the things that they're holding in their body that is preventing them, like taking up the space where something more precious could be there. That's just been my experience. What you will see here, right, is a little bit, so this is kind of like the opposite side of what, Radhika was saying. So yes, oil, lubrication, warmth, all of that, not warmth, but more, yeah, I mean, warmth is also there, not like heat, but these are kapha qualities, so we can bring those in. But when we want to balance kapha that's in our body already or in our mind, then certain things you can do, wake up early, This is why, like in Ayurveda, when somebody comes in and they have a kapha imbalance, especially physically, we do dry brushing. Adding in that warm oil massage, yes, is also good. Spices, like we talked about. And then not like, and even like you said, Dirga, the fasting doesn't have to be not having food, but but modulating the amount of foods that we eat. So eating more lighter meals, warmer meals. But I would argue for all of those people who, and I think there are a few of us here who need to eat more warming foods or have more warmth and nourishment and lubrication in our lives, but you tend to go towards the lighter meals, and because you feel that the heavier meals are not able to be tolerated by your body. So I would say that what you need to do then is dial it down. It's not that you can't necessarily eat those foods, but you don't need to eat them to a again, there's a continuum, there's a gradient. So you don't need to eat like heavy fettuccine pasta, like a whole bowl, but you can have a little bit with herbs, with a nice digestive tea at the same time, so that you're able to be satiated, but then also not feel extremely heavy. But movement is a big thing related to kapha. So getting out there, going on a walk, so there's now to increase kapha in the body, then you would do that restorative flow, the slower postures, the more, the ones where we stay in a posture for a little bit. But then when we want to break up that stagnant energy, that's when we do the more flow oriented, faster oriented. And it's the same thing, before I move on to the next slide, so there are certain scents that will also help to literally like cut through any of the like heaviness that we may feel. And as I told someone the other day, some of these things are easy to look up. The hardest thing to be able to do is to be able to recognize these qualities within us, right? And then be able to, then it is easy or easier to go and incorporate them. So, it's the mindfulness that I think is the biggest thing that I want to emphasize. So here, this is where also I was going to talk about the breath work. So, every time we have one of these sessions and we talk about the different energies, I bring this up because different breathing exercises, Radhika talked about the slow inhale, the slow exhales, being conscious to regulate the nervous system. Absolutely, that brings in that slowness, that calmness, that groundedness. But then when we have that stagnation, the opposite type of breath work has to be used, right? So these are where, we're doing things that are going to invoke more heat. These are things that we go a little bit faster. We have we talked about the nervous system. We have two sides, the right and the left, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So when we do predominantly right nostril breathing, that is the sympathetic side. So we're going to start increasing that, which gives more warmth and activation to our body. And yeah, so any questions on any of these? Sorry, I know I want to respect everyone's time. So, maybe this is where we spend a little bit more time on the emotional part. The biggest thing is this. That's at least what I think. I find often, right, that the things that that we want to run away from, that we don't want to address, that we're like, well, I am stressed at work and that's not going to change. Yeah, that, we may not be able to change the external circumstances that we're in. But if, again, going back to taking ownership and taking like the reins of our own health, we're going to have to move through life that will have all of these qualities that will either aggravate or support all of these qualities within us. How do we understand ourselves and how do we support ourselves is really the way that we're going to be able to to work through that. You know, spending time with people, talking about this in community, getting inspiration. That's why I put on the Taylor Swift music in the morning, because I just wanted to kind of, you know, bebop, you know, and everyone is obviously different. And I was joking about, you know, sorry for any of the haters, but things that motivate and energize you should be what you should do and have in your arsenal when you feel so heavy that you don't even want to look at your arsenal. It should be there for you to access, so that you can use it when you need it. And if you don't have, if you feel, excuse me, that you're unable to do that, then have something in place, whether it be a partner, whether it be a friend, you know, that kind of, or a reminder on your phone, or something that you see like on the wall behind me, you know, like sayings that motivate you, you know, to kind of at least be able to harness and have access to those things that'll bring you out of, you know, some of these heavy, you know, qualities. And then finally, I just wanted to share that, you know, so it is really important understanding ourselves and knowing these energies. And like for me, when I see this tree, it's like the perfect form of kapha that is grounded, that is strong, you know, that like it's really firmly rooted, but still then you see the beautiful growth, the reaching to the top, you know. And so in every one of these energies that we've thus talked about, it's a it's trying to see within us how and what we can access in order to bring those aspects out of us. And so again, none of these energies, even the heaviness, right, carries a sense of information and wisdom within it. And when we do meet it with a sense of openness and awareness, then we can use that so that, you know, hopefully that we can move out of any struggle that we're facing, or and yeah, and be able to use that not only to help ourselves, but to help the families that we're creating, and to help the people in our lives. And so I just wanted to thank you all for coming and spending this time with me and being really engaged. I really appreciate it. I will stop my screen share, and you know, love is the greatest form, you know, of kapha. And so I think every one of us should really try to connect at least to that aspect of us, not just by giving it out to others, but doing just one thing or saying one thing about ourselves every day, you know, that we either love or that we care about or that we, you know, think is awesome, because that is going to start, you know, watering that seed, you know. And I think that as women and as a society, we're told not, like, we're not valued or rewarded to do that. We're only rewarded or valued when we do it for others. And you know, it's very important, because oftentimes when we look outside of ourselves for that to be watered, we're going to be waiting a while. I wanted to share with you, or rather, I wanted you to share with me, if you guys have like 5 more minutes, about whether, like, how do you feel about these, you know, chai with veggies? Are there any topics that you would like to discuss? What is helpful? I would love to know that, so that, you know, when we do gather, that we can talk. You know, do you like the presentation format? Do you want to just have a chit chat and talk about any subject that comes up for you guys? Safety is another form of kapha, by the way, you know, and so it's really important, you know, for me also, that you guys feel safe. But let me, while you guys are, I feel like oh,
I really like this format, Viji,
oh, okay.
with the presentation and then time to ask questions and talk.
Okay, I'm just looking at the chat now and seeing all your and seeing all the comments. Yeah, I mean, I hope it helps. Like, because the thing is, I gave a talk a couple of days ago to this community of like, I think, the youngest person was like in their 70s. So I gave a talk on Ayurveda and it was about food, but it was the idea that food doesn't just come, as we discussed today, in what we eat. It comes in every which way. And so I was explaining to them also how these energies, are not, it's not that they just define us, right? It's like, for example, throughout the day, there's a clock, there's an energy clock. There's certain times of the day where certain energies that exist in the universe are more predominant. And so during those times, those energies are going to impact us. And it's not that we don't have the power to even change, how energy flows through us. I really do believe that we do have that power, and if we understand that we may be impacted by it, but I would argue that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be limited by, oh, like my body works this way, or I notice that this happens that way. Every one of you today, I know, like, are such amazingly strong, beautiful, like powerhouse women in whatever way that you guys are. And so I feel like the more that actually you don't necessarily come to me, but that you spend a little bit of time and understand what makes you tick, because then you harness that energy and and then create anything that you want to create. Be aware, because when there are so many people who I know who have like either malignant or non-malignant growths, things in their body, and really that's kapha. So this is why it's just so important to be aware. How does my body hold kapha? How does my body hold this energy? You have to ask yourself, is it in fat? And you know what? It's okay. Like, even though, I have gained quite a bit of weight since, COVID, I think it's important to have a healthy, body, and do exercise and things like that. But it's also important to understand that, if it's unhealthy, then it's unhealthy. But if it's not unhealthy, then, embracing who we are and the strength that these different qualities give us is really important. There's a reason why teddy bears are lovey and huggy. Okay. Anybody else have any questions before we close up? Well, I will stop recording, and I'll just stick around if you guys want to chit chat. But thank you so much for joining, and I really appreciate it. Next time we are going to talk about how to integrate all this, because all of these energies are made up of the different elements, but there is a unifying element called ether that really ties in everything. So that's what's the next. So stay tuned and. For the next Chai with Viji in December.